We do sort of outgrow the idea that we need to have mounds of packages under our tree, don't we? And yet how many of us still have in the back of our minds, oh, the holidays are such a pain because I got to run around and I got to buy all these presents and everybody wants everything. And if we have family, that can get a little overwhelming, and we can have a lot of pressure and stress at this time of year when we get to the holidays. And I think that, there's a movement that says, oh, let's put the Christ back in Christmas. Well, I'd like to put the love back into the families, into the holidays. And so today, we're actually recognizing and honoring the idea that out of all of the spiritual traditions, especially our Judeo-Christian heritage, actually comes a very lovely secular embrace of the holiday season. And of course, the whole idea of Santa Claus, Santa Claus, from Europe, from Germany, and actually in Germany, Saint Nick comes on December 6th, not on December 25th. But there's that same kind of thing of the gift giving and the being together in family and the holidays. And so I have to tell you that this could possibly be my favorite talk of any year. This talk that I give every year at this time. Because I think sometimes we think that love and our spirituality is only for when we're being spiritual. When we're meditating or praying for something, or when we're seeking conscious communion, or we're looking to manifest. But the truth is, our spirituality undergirds everything. And the one thing that all spiritual traditions agree upon is that another name for God is love. There's also an equally important agreement, is that another name for God is life. Life itself. Life as that which we share, that we are birthed into our families, and that our families and friends, our biological families, our adopted families, our chosen families, that whole arena is hugely important. And at this time of the year, a lot of that gets activated, doesn't it? And if we don't have a lot of family, we can feel lonely and left out. If we have too much family, it can feel a little overwhelming. If we have family we love, that's great. If we have family that we really don't like to spend time with, that is a little challenging. And of course, we don't have just our own family. We have the global human family. So I want to begin with a story that comes out of this book called My Grandfather's Blessings by Rachel Naomi Remen. Many years ago, my grandfather gave me a silver wine goblet, so small that it holds no more than a thimbleful of wine. Exquisitely engraved into its bowl is a bow with long ribbon streamers. It was made in Russia long ago. He gave it to me during one of the many afternoons when we sat together at the kitchen table in my parents' home, memorizing phrases from his old books and discussing the nature of life. I was quite young then, no more than 5 or 6. And when I became restless, he would revive my attention by bringing out the sacramental Concord grape wine he kept in the back of the refrigerator. He would fill my little beribboned wine glass with Manischewitz, and then put a splash of wine into his own, a big silver ceremonial cup, generations old. Then we would offer a toast together. At that time, the only other celebration I knew was singing Happy Birthday and blowing out the candles. But I loved this one even better. My grandfather had taught me the toast we used. It was a single Hebrew word, l'chaim, which he told me meant to life. He always said it with great enthusiasm. Is it to a happy life, Grandpa? I had asked him once. He had shaken his head. No. It is just to life. At first, this did not make a lot of sense to me, and I struggled to understand his meaning. Is it like a prayer? I asked uncertainly. Oh, no, sweetheart, he told me. We pray for things we don't have. We already have life. But then why do we say this before we drink the wine? He smiled at me fondly. Grandpa, I said, suddenly suspicious, did you make this up? He chuckled and assured me that he did not. For thousands of years all over the world, people had said this same word to each other before drinking wine together. It was a Jewish tradition. I puzzled about this for some time. Is it written in the Bible, Grandpa? I said at last. No, honey, he said. It's written in people's hearts. Seeing the confusion on my face, he told me that l'chaim meant that no matter what difficulty life brings, no matter how hard or painful or unfair life is holy and worthy of celebration. Even the wine is sweet to remind us that life itself is a blessing. It has been almost 50 years since I last heard my grandfather's voice, but I remember the joy with which he toasted life and the twinkle in his eye as he said l'chaim. It always seemed remarkable to me that such a toast could be offered for generations by a people for whom life had not been easy. But perhaps it can only be said by those kinds of people, by only those of us who have lost and suffered. We can understand its power. L'chaim is a way of living life. As I've grown older, it seems less and less about celebrating life and more about the wisdom of choosing life. Excuse me. To life. The Jewish tradition gives us the remembrance that life is originally blessed, not originally flawed. Life is originally beautiful, not originally sinned. And so when we come to the holidays and we come into our families and we come into these powerful traditions, one of the things that's happening over and over and over again is that we get the opportunity, if we are willing to embrace it, we get the opportunity to bless our lives, good, bad, and indifferent, to bless the people in our lives, good, bad, or indifferent, to bless life, to bless the very nature of life itself. Now, tradition can be an anchor, and it can also have a tremendous amount of nostalgia to it. But it is something that embeds us in the ongoing year after year after year of the flow of life. Karen asked us at the very beginning, how many of you feel like this year went by like that? And we have these markers to help us stop, pay attention, take a moment to bless life. And these traditions that we have, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Christian, whether they're Hindu, whether they're secular, Santa Claus, wherever they are, whether they're native traditions, indigenous people's traditions, these ground us in this long history that we all actually come out of, and invite us to remember that there is the possibility of love and of beauty. Over and over and over again, we get to see that wheel of life. Now, our lives don't always feel blessed. Our families don't always feel blessed. I told this story briefly at our Blue Holiday Sunday a few Sundays ago. My mother grew up in a family. Her mother hated the holidays, basically because it was way too much work. And so as a good German housewife, she was required to bake the cookies and make the stollen and decorate the house and do the Advent and do all the visiting and of course, all the presents were handmade and all of that stuff. And her mother just found it overwhelming. So she did it all, but she did it in a very obligatory point of view. And what my mother tells me, it told me in stories, is that there was always a lot more tension in the house than joy. And so my mother, when she decided to have children and began to confront the fact that we would have holidays in our families too, in our family, she made a deliberate decision that she would not pass that on. And she and my father, despite all the differences and despite their eventual divorce, they worked to make that holiday season magic. We were Catholic. We celebrated Advent every Sunday. We sat for an hour and a half. We drank coffee, sang Christmas songs. You wonder why I know every word of every Christmas song? It's because we sat every Sunday for an hour and a half to 2 hours with the songbooks open, with the words in front of us, and we sang for an hour and a half, 2 hours, eating cookies, drinking the coffee, being a family together, preparing for the family experience of, for us, the Christmas Eve tradition. I had the joy of following that along with my son. And at 13, he accused me. I know there's no Santa Claus. How do the Santa presents get into our house? I said what I had been saying every year up until that point. It's Santa magic. From the time he was 13 until the time he was 18, he schemed to discover how Santa presents got into the house. Because, we celebrated Christmas Eve, good German tradition, and we had the Christmas Eve services here. Santa presents were not there when we left, and they were there when we arrived back home again. He asked my mother, who said no, she didn't bring them. He asked the neighbor, who said no, she didn't bring them. Finally, when he was 18 years old, I said, okay, you're old enough now because you will one day have children of your own, and I'm going to tell you the secret of Santa magic. He said, I have to sit down for this. I said, did you never notice that every single Christmas Eve, every single one of them, I had to go back to the house? For some reason, right? I had to go pick up gloves that I had forgotten. Sometimes we got as far as the highway, and I would go, I've left my talk at home. Sometimes it was we were just right out the door and into the garage, ready to leave, and I would have to stop and say, oh, wait, I have to run to the restroom. Go ahead, go on out without me. Okay, in the next 2.5 minutes, I ran around like a crazy person. I filled up the stockings, I put out all the presents, all the Santa presents, because all the other presents were already there, and then quietly, calmly walked out to the car. And when we went on our way, he thanked me for making the magic for that long. I got a text 2 days ago from my son. As many of you know, he's healing from a big accident. He's been married. He has a 6-year-old stepdaughter and a little daughter on the way. And he texted me, thank you, Karen and Petra, for the beautiful Christmas tree. We gifted them with a tree. And thank you for teaching me that Christmas is about family. So he gets to now make magic, right? He gets to make magic and be in that place of love. And what I learned about all of that, right, is that we misunderstand the point of the presents. The point of the presents isn't to show love. It isn't to buy love. It isn't to care about someone else. The point of the presents is to say, I see you. I know who you are. And you belong here. And they don't have to be big. They don't have to be a lot. But when we give those gifts, whether we're giving Hanukkah gifts or Christmas gifts, right, there's that moment of somebody being seen and recognized And if we can really understand what we're doing with the whole holiday season and with the gift giving, do you see, we see that it's really about the legacy of love that we're reading, that we're giving, the legacy of love that we are leaving to our families. My grandmother did not leave a legacy of love, but my mother did, and I hope that I did too. And I hope my son does as well. Do you see? It is in the carrying on of traditions. Now, our traditions have changed over time. They've morphed. They've done all kinds of things. And yet there are kernels and cornerstones to that traditions that have been the thread. And we can see them and talk about them and see that legacy of love. And so the holidays, the whole holiday season gives us that opportunity, whether it's with our intimate family, our extended family, our friends, our chosen family, even at our workplaces, even at those crazy holiday parties that companies have, and whatever craziness goes on, we have that opportunity to really see each other in a beautiful way. Why? Because we pause, we stop for a moment in this particular time of the year. Now, the other thing that really is part of that magic that my parents made for us is that my mother spent a lot of time in the beauty of the home. Now, as Germans, we celebrated, and Roman Catholics, we celebrated Advent, and our house didn't get decorated until Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, the Christ child comes. It's actually the Christ child that gives gifts. And then they had to do some fancy footwork that the Christ child and Santa somehow were in league, because I knew about Santa. And so my mother did a lot of fancy footwork. Like, why do we get our presents so early? Why do we celebrate Christmas Eve? Well, one, we're German. Two, we're on Santa's early list. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Well, there's millions of children, and he cannot do all the children in one night. So some of us sign up to be on the early list. Okay. Seemed perfectly reasonable to me as a child. It's great. Right? And so I think that in the holiday season, in our homes, in our families, in our community, in our workplaces, we have the opportunity to really evidence three qualities of life, three qualities of the divine that sometimes I think might be a little elusive to us, especially in life today. The first one is the quality of beauty. Do we resent the decorating, or do we seek to make it beautiful? Even if it's just a few things put out. This year, we have a tabletop tree instead of a full-length tree, and I was like, I don't know about that. It's not traditional. Where am I going to put all my ornaments? I don't know. But it's beautiful. It's in the window, and it's exactly right for the condo. It's just the right space. Karen lets me do a lot of the decorating because I just really love that creating of that beauty, the beauty of it. And so think about one of the qualities of life itself, one of the qualities of the absolute infinite reality we speak about as beauty. How many of us actually go for convenience instead? Oh, I'm going to just do what's easy. Do we set our tables when we're going to eat together? Do we actually put out knife and fork and a napkin? I can't tell you how many of Jason's friends wanted to eat at our house because at home they ate in front of the television, or they ate fast food, or they literally ate standing up in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. I had junior high kids who didn't know how to use a knife and fork. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to be at our table. And so we have the opportunity we're invited into beauty, right? And isn't that a part of how we create sacred space, right? Somebody got that immediately. So in the holidays, we're turning our entire home into sacred space. everything placed, decorated. It doesn't have to be ostentatious. It doesn't have to be a lot. I don't have a single blinking light, and I don't have any garlands. But my house is decorated in a way that we really enjoy. You might have nothing but lights and garlands, but it's what makes it beautiful to you and creates that sacred space. It's an invitation to go beyond convenience, because we are busy, are we not? Life is going like that, isn't it? And to actually stop and say, no, really, I am going to pay attention to that. And isn't that the ultimate practice of mindfulness? To be mindful of our space. How does it look? How does it feel? Is it inviting? Does it really invite us to stop and pause and be present to the spiritual opportunities that are available to us in the holidays? And then there's this really annoying metaphysical truth, which I think is just, it's the annoying metaphysical truth: how you do anything is how you do everything. So we might think about how we take up the holidays. How do we take up the doingness, the family, the decorating, the gifts, or even deciding not to participate, which we are perfectly free to do. We can choose not to participate, or we can choose to do it very, very differently. But how we do anything is how we do everything. So if we're practicing inviting in beauty, this profound quality of the divine, which rests on order and harmony, which creates a space into which our psyche can relax, can become open, can become aware of that infinite in a different way, besides just manifesting, let's make stuff happen, or let's see what Spirit has in mind, right? It's an entirely different place to be in the experience of beauty and order, and of harmony and order, and the beauty that is the infinite, expressed so diversely by each of us. So the first quality is beauty. The second quality is kindness. I think that the holiday season calls us to kindness. And I remember when I discovered the Elvis Christmas CD, and my mother said, "That is not Christmas music." I said, "Yes, it is." I was particularly enamored by the song, "Why Can't Every Day Be Like Christmas?" Well, my mother thought that was the stupidest, schmaltziest thing she had ever heard. So I didn't say that very often. But why is it that we really think about love and kindness at the holidays, and maybe not as much throughout the rest of the year? What if we imagined that this was practice time? What if we imagined that the holidays was actually the time we're practicing being the way that we want to be? And our families give us a great opportunity to practice, don't they? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm going to read a little bit out of this wonderful little book. It's called Toward the Mystery by William Edelin. He was an author back in Seattle. And he wrote this: "Kindness is an art to be cultivated. It begins in the home. It is learned by the way father and mother treat each other, and the way both of them treat their children. But even if we are so unfortunate as to have come from a home where kindness was unknown, it is no excuse. It is never too late to start learning kindness, whether we are 10 or 85. As we prepare to enter into the beauty of this season, let our thoughts and reflections be upon the art of kindness. Where do we start? We start with our imagination. You imagine yourself as being the other person that you are about to dive into. Project yourself into the other life mentally. Surely you are not so drugged with self-obsession, self-centeredness, and self-preoccupation that you cannot do this. We know this from the native traditions, walk a mile in someone else's moccasins, right? Immanuel Kant, one of the very seminal German Prussian philosophers, he gave a philosophical understanding of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? Well, we know from the work that's been done in relationships that really what you want to do is do unto others the way that they want to receive, right? The 5 love languages teaches us that we actually want to know the other person and know how they can receive love. And so do unto others as we would have them do unto us sometimes is not actually the best possible policy. So Immanuel Kant, he has 2 articulations of this, and what he calls the categorical imperative. So listen to the first articulation. Act only according to that maxim that you can will or want to become a universal for everyone. Act only according to that idea, action, behavior, whatever it is, that you would want to be universalized. Do you see? It's not just how I want to be treated. But what if everybody were treated that way? What if everybody had that experience? Is that okay? Right? Is it not okay? Do you see this categorical imperative? And how do we know what it would be like to universalize what we're doing? How would we know that? We imagine it. Right? That's what our imagination allows us to do. And then we intuit the response. We imagine it happening to us. Let's say we were one of those people and we go, oh no, that doesn't feel good. And we imagine and intuit this thing that we want to have universalized. Do you see? This is so much different than thou shalt nots. Right? Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. Well, great. Then all I have to do is do what I'm told, and then I can do everything else. Okay. But I don't actually have to imagine for myself and learn and grow in those subtle distinctions of life that actually show up as kindness. So we can begin to engage in the idea of how do we be kind to people, whether it's our family members we don't get along with. Doesn't mean we have to agree with them, or people on the street, or people we work with, or people we disagree with. Can our words, actions, and behaviors, would we like them to be universalized? We would like everybody to behave that way and be treated that way. You imagine that. Start imagining that. It's an extraordinarily profound way to move into our morality and into our kindness. The second articulation, he says, is treat all people never as a means to an end, but always as an end in themselves. Well, I'll be nice to you because I think you're going to leave me money. Right? In our families, whatever that is, however we can use people or behave kindly towards people because of what we want for them, from them, because of what we think we need to get. Treat all people never as a means to an end, but always as an end in themselves, which means what? They have their own wants, their own needs, their own desires, their own life, their own thing that they're going for. And so I actually have to now imagine how my actions can be universalized with someone who has a different idea about life and about what they want. An extraordinary way to invite ourselves into kindness when maybe we're not actually sure what that looks like. He goes on to say, kindness grows with practice. It all begins in your imagination and your ability to listen. You know as well as I that we all, every last one of us, have need for being far more kind than we are. We cultivate kindness just as we cultivate a sense of beauty or an appreciation for art or music and literature. It takes practice and effort. Make no mistake about it. And gradually we will find our life flowing easily, effortlessly, kindly, and lovingly into other lives. Maybe what we need is a miracle of the heart. So what is the finest gift you can give your child? Prominence? Never. Wealth? Probably not. A fine education? Maybe. Is not the finest gift a knowledge of what it is to live with a great, kind, and loving heart? It is an art to be learned, and we teach it as in filling a vessel drop by drop. There is a last drop which makes the vessel run over. So with kindness. In a series of kindness, there is at last one which makes the heart run over. And I think that's why we make such a hoopla about the holidays. I think it's to practice. I think it's to practice these things, to practice beauty, to practice kindness, and ultimately I think it is to practice joy. And I know I have the same experience that you do. Sometimes joy is very elusive because life is busy. And now we have the holidays on top of it. It's even busier. And we tell ourselves the story about how busy it is, how challenging it is, how all this stuff is going on. And then we have what's going on in the world. How can we be joyful when there's stuff going on in the world? And yet, just like kindness, joy is a practice. Somebody gave this to me. Wait a minute. I'm in the wrong place. Let me go back. Let me go. Somebody gave this to me. Can you read that? Maybe it's not big enough. I have this sitting today. This time I have this sitting in front of in our kitchen where we can see it. It says, if you look, you will find with some certainty that joy is in the spaces in between. Joy is not in the presents. It's not in the lights. It's not in the carols. It's not in the tree. Joy is in the spaces in between. When we are open to the wonder and awe that the blessing that life is, when we are open and in presence with each other, with our family members, when we are present and intentionally living, deciding to be kind, deciding to have beauty in our lives, deciding how we are going to engage in the holidays, do you see all of that creates spaces in between? In my experience, joy sneaks in. And we have those moments where we're reminded of how life is meant to be. And I think that's a big part of what the holidays are about, is to invite us into those moments. And then to ask ourselves, how do we stretch those moments? How do we make more of those moments? How, like Elvis Presley sang, could we actually make every day more like the holidays? So this book, Marcus Bach, he talks about this. I'm going to close with this. The obvious question is, do we make Christmas, or do we make the holiday season, or does it make us? The obvious answer, it is reciprocal. We make it, it makes us. It is an event in history and a phenomenon in time, and it is an episode in us. The spirit of Christmas is the spirit of life, newly born, newly recognized, miraculous, according to the law of love and life. Hang up a special star, unwrap your spiritual gifts, kneel down and give thanks, sing a new song. The miracle is that something has happened, not out there somewhere, but to us, to you and me. The greatness of Christmas is that it inspires us to look at life through a shepherd's eyes or a wise man's knowing. So I'm going to invite you to take up the holidays and to seek out those qualities of the divine, and to intentionally decide to bring them forward, to make them a part of your expression of the holiday season. And in this way, each one of us, regardless of the legacy that we have received, do you see? We become the contributors of the legacy of love that we are leaving. So I'm going to invite you to go within. I'm going to close our prayer for this evening, or prayer for this morning. I'm going to close with a piece of music some of you will recognize. I just invite you to be present with it. If you don't know who's singing, it's Michael Gott.
My name is Francis Tolliver, I come from Liverpool. 2 years ago the war was waiting for me after school. To Belgium and to Flanders, to Germany, to here, I fought for king and country I loved dear. 'Twas Christmas in the trenches, where the frost so bitter hung. The frozen fields of France were still, no Christmas song was sung. Our families back in England were toasting us that day, their brave and glorious lads so far away. I was lying with my messmate on the cold and rocky ground, when across the fields of battle came a most peculiar sound. Says I, now listen up, me boys, each soldier strained to hear, as one young German voice sang out so clear. He's singing bloody well, you know, my partner says to me. Soon one by one each German voice joined in harmony. The cannons rested silent, the gas cloud rolled no more, as Christmas brought us respite from the war. As soon as they were finished, a reverent pause was spent. God rest ye merry gentlemen, struck up some lads from Kent. The next they sang was Stille Nacht, 'tis silent night, says I, and in two tongues one song filled up the sky. There's someone coming towards us, the frontline sentry cried. All sights were fixed on one lone figure trudging from their side. His truce flag like a Christmas star shone on that plain so bright, as he bravely strode unarmed into the night. Then one by one on either side walked into no man's land. With neither gun nor bayonet, we met there hand to hand. We shared some secret brandy and we wished each other well. In a flare-lit soccer game, we gave 'em hell. We traded chocolate, cigarettes, and photographs from home. These sons and fathers far away from families of their own. Young Sanders played his squeeze box and they had a violin. This curious and unlikely band of men. Soon daylight stole upon us, and France was France once more. With sad farewells we each began to settle back to war. But the question haunted every heart who lived that wondrous night. Whose family had I fixed within my sight? 'Twas Christmas in the trenches, where the frost so bitter hung. The frozen fields of France were warmed as songs of peace were sung. The walls they'd built between us to exact the work of war had been crumbled and were gone forevermore. Oh, my name is Francis Tolliver, in Liverpool I dwell. Each Christmas come since World War I, I've learned its lessons well. But the ones who call the shots won't be among the dead and lame. And on each end of the rifle, we're the same.